Yo, we're back. Today, I am bringing you Harley. He's someone that has been local here in Denver. I've known him for quite a while, and I've had several conversations with him over the last few years that I feel like he's kind of changed my opinion about some things or just provided me insight into a topic that I was like, that's really cool. So he's on here today for that reason, and he'll hopefully bring you some insight that a little different than mine that can help you out. Harley has probably a little deeper formal education in terms of exercise science. We both studied kinesiology, exercise science in college, but he went and studied under OPEX, and now he coaches a pretty wide range of people. If you want to just kind of give an example or talk about
Yeah.
where you learned everything and who you coach.
Yeah, absolutely. John alluded to it. I have an exercise science degree. I went to school in Monterey. That gave me the opportunity to work at NC Fit right after school. So I worked under Jason Kalipa and that standard of gym for a year and a half or so. From there, I moved to Atlanta, lived in Atlanta for off and on for about a year and a half, 2 years, working as competing as an athlete under Training Think Tank, and just trying to learn from those coaches there. And along the way, I received certifications from various organizations. I had my CSCS for a period of time. I completed the courses under the OPEC CCP model, those types of things, but I never actually did the final project for CCP. So technically that certification isn't legit, but I did all of the modules and education around it. So those are sort of the giants that I sort of stand on their shoulders, and I use them and their principles to guide my training as I work with athletes under the remote company called The Pack. We have a lot of very high level masters athletes, as well as some semifinal level athletes under our roster. And now my day job is the manager of Arsenal Health's South Denver location.
So I guess the first thing is I didn't realize you were with like NC Fit and Kalipa and that crew. That's sweet.
That was very
early.
early.
I knew you were with Think Tank for a while. And those who don't know Training Think Tank, it's just probably like the most dense population of high level individualized coaches in the space of CrossFit. Super knowledgeable people. And you were there with them for a while, right?
Yeah, I started getting coached by Brandon Dorman in 2018, and then I transitioned to working with Kyle Ruth in around 2020 and was with Kyle for a few years as well. So I was an athlete under them for about 5 years, which was a unique experience for sure.
Yeah, it's good. Probably learned a lot. You're heavily involved in coaching the competitive CrossFitters, but like you said, you also train the general population. You spend a significant amount of time training the general population. That'll be something we talk about. Because a lot of people listening to this aren't necessarily competitors, and they just like to hear about how to get fitter, and you'll be able to give them insight.
Try to anyways.
All right. So first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to pull up a video here in a second. There's been, and I'll give a little bit of background that I feel like needs to be given on this. And Harley hasn't seen this video, and Harley is not as involved, probably for his own good, in like the politics of CrossFit, like the Andrew Hiller videos and what's going on with that. And
I have a funny story about Hiller, but it's not me directly. We can circle back.
All right. So Dave Castro has been under fire in the space. It's like 3 days ago, Andrew Hiller released a video on his channel. Someone else released the video on his channel, so he might not hold these opinions. Point being, though, a provocative video about the politics of CrossFit, and it put Dave Castro under fire, saying he's washed and he's not doing his job good, essentially. The only historical context I want to give before I play this video is after Lazard died, there was a group of athletes that wanted change to happen at the CrossFit Games to a very high degree. So much so that there was a calling to have Dave Castro to step down from his role. And when that happened, the other side of the political aisle, I guess, in CrossFit just had an absolute meltdown that they were calling for Dave Castro to step down. And now fast forward to some years later, now the other side of the aisle is putting Dave Castro in the hot seat. So that's like the one thing I want to talk about. So now we're at a point in time where both sides of the political aisle in CrossFit have called out Dave Castro's poor leadership or whatever I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Like this is a cyclical event. I feel like they have to point the finger at someone every couple of years.
Yeah, it's the same thing that happens in politics in our country, like the hypocrisy of both sides. But I had to point that out. It just kind of frustrates me. All right, so I'm gonna pull up this video. I think this is Seth from Jump Ship. I think he does a very good job of explaining the situation in a non-provocative way. And I'm fine talking about this kind of stuff as long as we're trying to be constructive. Like, I don't care to like point my finger and say something could be better or something could be better. Just if we're being constructive about it, it's great. And I think he does a good job of doing that. And he kind of stages the question for us. So here we go.
Sorry, I can't hear it, man.
You can't hear it? All right, that's fine. So I won't play the video. I thought you were gonna be able to hear it.
It might just be going through your headphones. That might be the issue. But
We're good. It's not worth it. So more or less what he gets at in the video is the CrossFit Games as we know it is more or less brought to the discretion of testing to Dave Castro and whoever is helping, and that there is variance from year to year in the metrics that they're testing, the slight biases that they could go in either direction. And that's just what it is. That's what we know. That's the system we work in. So for us to call out something to be subjectively wrong might not be the most accurate way about it. And that if we really wanted to create change in the space, we would need to put up some form of guardrails on the competition so that someone who's programming the competition has something to work with, whether that's saying there's certain time domains that they have to hit, a certain threshold of movements that they have to hit. And that's the thing, is it's really hard to get to that point, is making it from a subjective test, because CrossFit is subjective at every competition. So many competitions can be so different depending on the level, depending on the year. And I think that's a problem. I really do. I think that's a problem. I think if there was more consistency in the sport, I think it would be better. But the figuring out how to do that, I think, is very, very hard. And I commented on it, telling him he's right. We need to have more objective metrics in the sport. And he kind of commented back. He's just like, yeah, that might sound good, but good luck in trying to figure out how to do that. And my main problem with figuring out how to do that would be getting everyone to agree. I think you could figure out a framework on being like, you have to have a bout that's 50 minutes. You have to have a bout that's whatever, 30 seconds long. That could be a max lift, train the top end gear. I do think you could figure out a way to do it, but getting everyone to agree on those rules, I just don't see happening. And that would be the hardest part, is getting everyone to agree. And to do that for HQ, I think that would be very hard.
The International Fitness Federation, I think it is, IFF.
So Paul was big about talking about them, and I was like, had this question. I was like, I probably should look up what they do, and I didn't. No, have they done this? Exactly what I'm saying?
Standardized version of CrossFit. So like it's much more linear. I think they have and this is me just recalling what I had read about them years ago, right, when they first came out. And to my understanding, it was they were trying to create a systemized approach to a well-rounded and balanced fitness test. And I think it was something along the lines of they had like a menu of potential tests, and that at each event they would kind of pull and make the combination of tests that fit that framework and were, again, measurable, observable, repeatable. So to your point, it would be much more objective because the rowing and burpee event is the rowing and burpee event type of approach. And I could be a little wrong. I think that may have been the earliest renditions of it. They may have changed over the years, but that seems like what it was at the time.
So do you think, just like going off my statement, is that the fact that I think it would be good for the sport of CrossFit if there was more standardization, more consistency, like the IF3 is trying to do. Like, do you think that would be good for the sport if more people adopted this?
I think it goes against the methodology of unknown and unknowable or constantly varied. And I don't agree in the competitive space that everything needs to be unknown ahead of time before the event. I think that they could release all of the movements and loadings for the given event 6 8 weeks in advance to give people opportunity to peak and prepare those movement patterns and volumes appropriately. And I think it would keep everyone a lot safer. But I think that the nuance, or sorry, the variables and the unknown creates anticipation and excitement for the competitors. And I think that's what keeps people going a little bit. Does that lend to a less safe competitive environment? Maybe, but I think that there's something to be said for that. And if you are branding it CrossFit, then you have to fall in line with the methodology. And if that's, that is a principle of the methodology.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's just the brand name situation, right?
I mean, I think I don't know. So if we could throw out your argument, and I think for the sake of this conversation, it would be better to throw out the argument about keeping it with the methodology. I mean, you're right. You're using logic, which is good, but I don't want to use the methodology as a reference point just because the methodology's done a lot. It's done a lot of good for the sport, but we have to keep in mind, it was made 25 years ago and it hasn't really changed much. And I think we can make a distinction with the sport of CrossFit and just like the general population. I just don't want to use the argument of the methodology, which is
I mean,
fair to use. It's fair to
I
use.
think that and to be clear, like I don't train my remote clients with pure CrossFit's methodology. I use periodization, I use conjugate model of strength development and accommodated resistance and linear based progressions all the time. I know that conjugate and linear are contradicting in nature, but my point is there are many tools out there to develop fitness, especially for the athletes who are competing at the highest level of the sport and need to maximize capacity of their deficiencies. That said, if you're branding something CrossFit, I think CrossFit takes that stance of the methodology as the framework of the event. And that's the unfortunate aspect. And that's the uphill battle we're kind of debating and discussing. Can it be done better? For sure. But will CrossFit bend over and say, hey, you can use our name, but you can't bridge it, or you don't have to bridge it to the methodology? I don't think that they don't give way with that. Right.
I see what you're saying. You're just saying it's a part of the system. It's a feature of the system that's probably not going to change because
Probably
it's
not going
tied
to
to the.
change, and it may be
Yeah.
the hindrance to change. So, can it be done safely? Can we increase safety measures and preparation for the athletes? Yes. And I think that's just through letting them know what the test will be 3 months in advance, 2 months in advance. That's 8 to
All
12
right.
weeks. That's a common training cycle. Then they could be prepared. But that's a different conversation, I think.
That's a good thought. I mean, to 12 weeks out. I mean, you're trying to support the games, which is nice of you. So I guess the question would be, so me talking about this problem of subjective, like CrossFit Games is subjective, and you're just kind of like laying out facts. You're not giving me your opinion about it as much. You're just kind of saying like, this is the system we're working in, and this is what it is, and yeah, which is fair. Like you're using a lot of logic, which is good, but I want your opinion.
Yeah.
So this problem of,
I think that's my opinion. I think
do you
that
think this is a necessary problem we need to solve? Is that we need to make it more objective, and do we need more consistency? Because like you laid out, doing it at the CrossFit Games is probably going to be hard to accomplish those goals.
So I think that you need to define what aspect of the events are you trying to make more objective? Are you trying to make more black and white standards per movement? Are you trying to make each event have I know you laid out like a framework of certain time domains and modalities. Like, are you trying to make it where it's standardized from event to event to where you know what to expect? Or is it the seasons format, right? Because now we have two different opposing like governing bodies. We have CrossFit and WFP. And if you look at how many people withdrew from WFP's third event of the year, most of the high level people did because they were completely burnt out and nearly broken.
So
Like,
yeah, here, I'll clear up my question. This is my question. I want the test of fitness to be the same on a year-to-year basis. That's what it would be. And I
on
could
your
almost say this:
WFP or a different organization.
CrossFit. I want CrossFit. That I think WFP might already be doing that, but I want consistency from what's tested in the open to what's tested at the next level, whether it's quarterfinals, semifinals, or the games. I want it to be the same on a year-to-year basis. And this is like one thing I talked about in my last video about with Paul was the CrossFit Games throwing a 3-hour bout at athletes every few years, like the marathon row. Athletes don't train for those crazy long bouts. They can go and perform it. And we talked like if the CrossFit Games would have just done a 5K row or a 10K row, the results probably would have been the same.
For
And
sure. I
like
mean,
it's just
Jason
almost
Filippo won the 2K and the marathon or half
yeah,
marathon, whatever it was
yeah,
that
there
year.
you go.
So
Like at that point, it's just theatrics. I want consistency, and I think I want consistency, and I just don't know if it's possible.
I agree. I think that the changes that have happened nearly every single year since 2018, whenever they tried the first run at sanctioned events, every year to 2 years, they have changed some major construct of the season, and I think that that is unreasonable, and I think that they had a fairly good system. It may not have been financially because of how much it costs to run the regional-based events before 2018 or from 2018 and earlier. I think that the sanctioned events is a good model because it distributes the expense of the events across other entities, but I do think that the season itself needs to just stay the same for 5 years, right? Like, we have changed so much every single year, and I I don't wanna say I don't know what's going on in the season this year because I have a pretty good idea, but with age group changing, they have in-person events this year. Teams have in-person events and online, I think, and individuals have in-person events and online. It increases the opportunity to make it to the next level or qualify for something, which is cool. But the fact that there's quarterfinals again, and last year there was no quarterfinals, it's like they make a change and then they backpedal. I don't like that. I think that they just need to stick with a format for a fair run, which I think is like 5 to 10 years, to truly let people be able to prepare for the events, for the different stages of the season. So, yes, I think that they need to standardize the format of the season. I don't think that every event needs to be exactly the same. I do agree there needs to be something long, short, medium, and majority of the tests should probably be somewhere between 13 to 20 minutes because that is the most kind of common time domains. And I think that it's unfortunate a little bit that they went to all in stadium events for this past CrossFit Games, other than the row run row, I think was the first event. And aside from that one outdoors event, everything was indoors, and that kind of sucks because I think it took away the like novelty and the expression of specialty based items. And that's what made the games really special. So I don't think every event needs to be the same. I think the format of the season, the standardization of movements needs to be clear and black and white. And we need to keep people safe through allowing them adequate preparation for what is going to be tested.
Yeah, that's good. So you're not as quite on the side of the fence of making it similar from year to year, which would definitely seem redundant. And I'm talking about movements and tests itself. Like if it was very similar from year to year, it would definitely seem redundant and it might seem boring at times. And like I'm okay with that. I just would rather have
You could probably make the
consistency.
argument that it has been pretty consistent from year to year the past 3 years.
I would say at the lower levels. Well, I mean, I guess at the
The games, you could probably make that argument the last 3 years. It's been a lot more consistent. More consistent, not perfect. I'm not saying it's like a cookie cutter framework, but I think it's been pretty consistent.
it's
You have a
been
good
fairly
idea.
it's been yeah, I mean, it's been consistent enough. It's just the examples that I laid out is like the guardrails of the programmer not being able to throw out a marathon row. Just like those outlier data points, I guess what my argument is held upon.
If you gave them a 16-week or longer, if you want to, like lead up as my sort of idea and or like guardrail would be
I think that's
for
great.
an
I think
endurance
that is
event,
a very good idea.
do you think that would then make it safe?
I think that would go a very long ways. I think giving them like being like, here's 3 months. Like, what if they announced the workouts to the CrossFit Games 4 months before the games? I think it would absolutely make them more safe. And it would give the athletes, if it was 3 months, athletes could go a training block or two leading up to it. And I mean, the only thing it would take away is like the fans' perspective of like the novelty of being like, oh, what the heck are they doing? Which I could care less about as a competitor. Like it doesn't matter. But I think you're onto something. I think that's good insight that releasing it early could help.
I think having a cap for the endurance event would be helpful. Like to your point, you're like 3 hours on a rower, that's like insane. It's like
That's
I agree. I
unnecessary.
think that it's a little unnecessary be given the I think you would actually have a more exciting finishes with the 5K row, right? With a 20-minute event because it would be a tighter race. There would be less separation value, even though there would be a more dominant and clear winner in the marathon row. I do think that it would feel like a tighter race and maybe even more exciting.
Yeah, because they're trained for that. That's what they
Correct.
do.
Correct. And I think that like the Camp Pendleton days, like I'm just thinking of like OG back in the day, doing a triathlon on Camp Pendleton, that was really unique. Like mountain biking, running, and swimming. Like it wasn't road bikes. It was they made a hard right hand turn into a sand pit and flipped over the handlebars. Like it was
Yeah, that's great.
definitely unknown. And was that safe? No, but was it cool? Yeah. Like it was pretty dang cool. So I think you could do something again, utilizing the outdoors, the specialist type events and the novelty at the games, because I do think that really increased the fanfare and the experience for everyone. We were talking about CJ, my wife and I were talking about what was the London based sanctional event? I can't think of the name.
Strength and depth,
Strength and depth.
or yeah,
Exactly. So they had them row actual crew boats in the like London River. Like, how cool is
that's
that?
cool. I mean, I think it's sweet. I think doing that outdoor stuff is awesome. But to your point, like, I mean, was the mountain biking maybe not safe? Yeah, I guess mountain biking's dangerous. But if you give them 4 months, like, I think the arguments of safety are like almost retracted because at that point you can analyze. You can be like, is this gonna be safe? Is this not? Make
Yeah.
sure you have a good course, time of day, whatever. You can do all those things. All right. So I want to get into more just training focus. So one thing I haven't said this, like, I have like a lot of like crazy thoughts I feel like in my head that I think about. And like, I don't really, I mean, I talk to like Zoe and like some people at the gym and I'll like share some things. And like, most of the time they don't really give me an opinion and tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm not. But someone like you think about these things. And this is one of the opinions that I've had about the space for a very long time. And I haven't really gotten someone's opinion on it. I wanted to talk about this on the last podcast, but we didn't make it. And I want to hear your opinion. So, one thing I get worried about, and I would say this is slightly more to the demographic of people who train higher volumes, slightly competitive, and a little less towards the general population, but there's still truth in people in the general population, is I get worried that my training right now, accumulating a significant amount of butterfly pull-ups, butterfly chest to bar, muscle ups, these dynamic movements, kipping handstand push-ups, these dynamic movements that I always refer to as sport-specific movements to CrossFit. That I accumulate a significant amount of these on a weekly basis, and I've been doing this for whatever, 10 years, accumulating high volume of all these movements. And I think I'm like, when I'm 50, how's my body going to hold up? Are my joints going to be okay? And then I go and look at other people who've been doing it longer than me, and I see some things that I get worried about. I Josh Bridges is my favorite example. When you look at his lockout position, his elbows are just not locking out like they used to. And that could be individuality, like his dysfunction was already there, and then it might not have to do with CrossFit. But I also see the same thing with Rich Froning. I see dysfunction in his elbow joint. And I feel like there's other people on the list that have been doing it for a very long time. And I see their movement now and I'm like, that worries me. I don't know if I want to be there. Like, do you think that's a realistic concern I have?
I mean, I think you're on the right track of understanding that most people who, especially the top in the sport or people who chased the top in the sport for a long period of time, didn't do it for longevity. They did it because it was either their career and they were making money off of sponsors and endorsements. They were pursuing the highest levels of competition, which require really high volume training load and stressful training load. Or to your point, you're like, or they had some underlying dysfunction that was overlooked or ignored for too long a period of time. I think the main line there is that we don't do this shit for longevity. Excuse my language, but really, like most people who want to compete in the sport aren't trying to think about how they're going to feel when they're 50. Is that reasonable for everyone? No, not at all. I think that most GPP, like Gen Pop people, they should just be doing standard kipping pull-ups if kipping at all. And that's really if they have the requisite shoulder health, function, and mobility, stability to do kipping. And then from there, like almost no one gets taught how to butterfly pull up, in my classes. And when people ask about it, I say, is this something you feel like you need to learn to go faster? Or is this something you want to learn because you think it's going to be valuable or like it's going to be entertaining to you or fulfilling to you?
My main question first is people who are interested in competing, people who want to do a high volume, that are interested in competing in the sport of CrossFit, is how do we mitigate these potential risks that you kind of agree that there's a chance if you're doing 150 chest to bar week after week, that there's a real possibility on a joint level you could cause long-term dysfunction. So I guess the question is, how do we like mitigate that? And I guess the easiest answer would be to do less. That's like the easy answer. And like what I've thought in my head would be, like for myself, if I were to get back to training a super high volume, is I would go, and I talked about this on the last podcast that I had, would be having days where you're not doing these sports specific movements, because you can still get very fit doing strict based movements or sitting on a machine and doing strength work. I just think the problem lies in accumulating a significant amount of these reps in a high intensity manner when you are pushing it aerobically. That is the part that I think competitors need to be cautious with on a year-to-year basis on that volume they're accumulating. How much, and that's just how much pure sport-specific CrossFit are they accumulating? So how could you mitigate, I guess, the potential dysfunction that could be created
Sure.
for a competitor? What's your
Yeah, I
stance?
mean, I think that for those who want to be competitive, they have to gradually progress to the requisite volumes of the sport, right? You said 150 pull-ups. I think that that's even probably a little bit more than absolutely necessary to be, high level of the sport. It depends on what level. I think every sort of tier along the way will require a different amount of volume, right? Like we look at the open workouts that in the past years, I think there was one in 2019 that was like thrusters and pull-ups, right? I think it's around 105 is pretty average for chest to bar in open workouts. So we're talking about someone who wants to get from open to quarterfinals. Cool. They probably have to be able to manage 100 chest to bar within a 10-minute window or a 12-minute window, and without breaking down the skill of their kipping and or muscular endurance. So yes, you have to get to the requisite volume. And I think volume is king over time, especially to have the prerequisites nailed down. But for the sake of longevity, I think that the other variables outside of the gym are also super crucial. So are they fueling appropriately, sleeping appropriately, and recovering between sessions well? What is the time between upper body pulling sessions? Are they doing, upper body pulling 4 days a week? And if so, that might be a little bit too much. Could you, to your point, layer in joint support exercises such as a dumbbell Zotman curl, a pronated grip barbell curl to bring balance to the elbow joint? Absolutely. And I think that those things should be staples in everyone's program for the sake of longevity. So I'll summarize. We have requisite volume. You need to understand how many of a certain movement pattern you have to be able to do to be relevant or competitive within the level of the sport you're at. You have to build to that requisite volume slowly and gradually. Does it need to be a multi-day a week thing? Probably not. And should you be layering in bodybuilding isolation-based movements to support the joints and bring balance to the system? Absolutely.
So I think your third point is very worth talking about. And I guess to my example, my data point I'm going off of is coming from people who I would say didn't perform bodybuilding style, rehab style exercises to the degree of which we are now. The sports progress, we understand, like you just said, that someone doing CrossFit might benefit from doing curls. And I think what you're saying, like you're getting at the point that doing accessory work is important for reasons outside of just like pure performance. Like it can provide structure and stability on a joint level. And I think that just comes down to you can't be snatching all the time. You can't be doing Olympic lifting. You can't be doing heavy back squatting. That you need these exercises. And that's not something I was going to think about, but it's absolutely true that if you're interested in keeping your body healthy, you need to be doing these accessory movements. Like they are important for your rehab and on a joint level. And it might seem silly to do bicep curls. And a lot of people listening to this probably would sit on the side of the fence that doing curls, if you're doing CrossFit, is unnecessary. And I agree with your stance that doing accessory movements is beneficial for longevity of the joints.
Are you chasing a sick pump and just doing burnout sets and triple drop sets to failure for your bicep curls? Or are you doing slow tempo work with control and awareness to how you're moving? I think those are two very different approaches to the same exercise. And I think that when we're discussing joint support versus actual hypertrophy work, those are two separate like mindsets that the athlete needs to keep in mind when they're going through that training session. So when I ride in bicep curls for my client Jace because his shoulder's a little irritated from hanging gymnastics because he's a big dude, weighs 215. It's like, yeah, I'm telling him do some banded strict pull-ups till failure and do light but tempo chest supported hammer curls for sets of 15 to 20 to build muscular endurance without putting a ton of stress on the connective tissue of his shoulder from doing 150 pull-ups, to your point. And is that going to translate to chest to bar? If we're just talking about local musculature and its ability to be enduring and tolerate repeated low or submaximal contractions, yeah, in theory, it should, as long as he is also on another day of the week doing the full movement, right? Because there is something special about gymnastics from a coordination and a systemic the systemic load that you get from organizing your system that you can't recreate with bicep curls. We're not saying that gymnastics doesn't have its place, but I think there's a way to create balance across the week that is still developing the qualities within the musculature and the system without putting as much stress on the joints.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very realistic way. I think the first one that you said is limiting volume, but you're adding in another movement that is very close, I would argue, to the actual movement. It's not the exact same, and you're not going to be able to get the exact same unless you do the exact same movement. So, like as a coach or someone trying to limit the amount of sport-specific movements they're doing, for the reason I'm saying is I think that's a very feasible way to do it, is add a strict movement that you can do for a high rep that can build up a significant amount of fatigue in that motor program. And that could decrease your weekly, monthly volume of the dynamic stress that we're talking about on a joint. Very, very feasible option. The second thing that's very important is you're talking about the contraction types that you're having. And when you're doing sport-specific movements, they are never eccentrically loaded slowly. They are all very fast concentric movements. All that means is you are never controlling the movement down slowly. And that's very important for joint health and stability, is that me as an individual or any CrossFit competitor, if all they're doing is pure CrossFit, they're not accumulating hardly any time on any muscle group or tendon for the most part in a slow eccentric setting. And that's so important for health. And that's what you're getting at, is doing curls with a slow eccentric. You're accumulating time on an eccentric load, slowly lowering it, which is so different than any classic CrossFit workout. You just don't go slow in classic CrossFit. It's all about going fast. But the notion of going slow is so important for joint health. Like so many people, when they go to a PT, they're going to have them do tempo stuff. They're going to have them control the eccentric, the lowering phase of the movement to a high degree, because all we do is go fast. And when all you do is go fast, things break down. You have to spend time doing exactly what you said. Slower eccentrics, accessory work, controlling it on the way down. And I firmly believe that if you do not spend time doing that, you're going to end up if you're performing a high amount of volume, you're going to end up with a high level of dysfunction, and you're going to end up in a PT's office.
So to align with that, have you read Triphasic Training, the book?
No, I actually had someone DM me about that like last week.
It's a great book. It's a good one. Cal Dietz, smart dude. There's a line in there, big brain line, and it says, "You cannot produce more force than you can absorb." So essentially,
Perfect.
your
Yep.
eccentric load,
Perfect.
you cannot produce, if you cannot absorb it eccentrically, you're not going to produce the equal and opposite reaction force. So if you cannot perform strict pull-ups, but you're trying to do butterfly pull-ups and you're just hitting the end of your shoulder, your connective tissue is taking the full blunt, whole full brute force of that load, and you're not able to absorb it effectively. Therefore, the increase of injury goes up.
That's a very good quote. Say it again.
You cannot produce more force than you can absorb, I believe is the
That
quote.
is so true on so many levels. And I would almost go to say, to produce more force, you need to be able to absorb more force.
Correct.
Like,
So that's why eccentric tempo based training or even overload based training, band assisted squats seems super counterintuitive at the surface level, works so well using weight releasers, using band assisted squatting to where you can actually walk out a back squat with 105% of your 1 rep max, feel it at the top, lower it down into the bottom position, and then get some help through the sticking point and stand it back up again. The bottom feels light and fast. It's like, wow, that was still hard at the top and hard from the start, but the sticking point in the bottom feels so quick. As an athlete, it's a very novel experience. And I think that it actually manipulates the nervous system to produce way more force after doing a block of training of that type of overload work. Anyways, I just went off a little side note, but I
I mean,
think,
it's important. I get it. It's the overloading eccentrics for performance is a huge deal, and it's something that's given me a lot of benefit. But
well, let's go back to
just
GPP with that idea of overloading eccentrics. What's the most common recommendation to get a strict pull up?
this the slow eccentrics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just do a
Yeah.
negative, right? It's like start
Yep.
at the top, go down as slow as possible. If you don't have enough strength to pull yourself back up again, that's by definition an overloaded eccentric.
Yeah. I mean, that's a basic one that everyone does because when like a lot of circles we hang around, you hear about overloaded eccentrics. You're just thinking like crazy heavy barbell, super taxing on the nervous system, but it goes down all the way to the most fundamental level, which is a strict pull up. And that's like, I mean, it's a great way to get a pull up. Like, if
It
you're
is.
trying to get a pull up, you should have slow eccentrics, slowly controlling it on the way down in your program. Like, that's almost everyone would agree with that.
Isometrics, eccentrics, and overloading. It's good stuff.
I mean, yeah, I mean, both of those. I mean, so just like, I guess back to the question is figuring out for competitor standpoint is spending time on a muscle fiber in different settings outside of the demands of the sport. So that would mean spending more time doing slow eccentric movements. And we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of isometrics, but isometrics are another very good way to accumulate time on the muscle fiber that would be very beneficial for preserving joint health and integrity long term. So now I want to get more to the general population. And the main question with the general population about this would be, I guess, first off, like, I question the use of, and you were like kind of touching on it, and like we almost went down this hole earlier, but we didn't. And I'm happy. So I'm just talking to general population people work out for 5 to 8 hours a week. The use of these sport specific movements in CrossFit. And I'll give you my opinion about it, and you can give me yours. I've like kind of low key had beef with these movements for a very long time. And people are always surprised to hear that opinion. And this is the way I think the perfect ideal situation should be. I think those movements are good. I think they should be touched. I think people should do them. I think, though, that they should be done in a setting that is not under a metcon. It is not in a conditioning. It is not under, you're not under aerobic distress, in like a skill setting when you can stop, when you can rest, and you're striving for the highest possible quality of the reps. This could be butterfly pull-ups, muscle ups, handstand walk, all these skills that are super hard. And what I'm getting at is I think in a conditioning setting, I think it is, and I asked Paul this question last week, and he slightly changed my opinion about it, is I think in a class setting, in a metcon, I think the importance to have a format that is highly accessible to intensity. So a wide range of people could come into to your gym, hit a metcon, and it could be pretty basic, nothing crazy complex, and they could reach a high level of intensity. I don't think you need to train these movements, these sport specific movements, in a Metcon setting regularly for the general population. I don't think you can. I think the benefits we're getting from them, we can get from a skill setting when it's slower. You can accumulate better reps. And I think once you start putting them in a class setting, in a Metcon, in a conditioning setting, the quality of the reps go down. I think it can be slightly destructive. And I think not as many people can do it and add intensity aerobically. I don't think they're going to get as good of a workout if they add it there. That's my take. What do you
It's not a
think?
bad take. Um, it's not a bad take, and I think there's idealistic. Like there's the ideal, and there's reality, and I think that you have to have very passionate and enthusiastic coaches who can coach higher skill gymnastics based movements effectively and bring excitement to that when you put it in a skill setting in place of the strength for the day in a class. I do think that there's a lot of merit and value there, but similarly to some snatch days, right? Like some people never show up to snatch day because they're just like, well, I can't do it well, so I don't want to. And that's totally it's fine, but it's not fine, right? Like I think that it's up to everyone to decide what they want to get out of fitness. But I think that by skipping the gymnastics days, especially a skill development session, they are leaving a lot on the table and they're not going to develop that neurological and that coordination systemically across their whole system that I talked about earlier. I think that gymnastics has so much utility in developing global coordination and proprioception so spatial awareness that um, can't be replicated with like a barbell. Given in a class, most people are just trying to come in, get fitter, get stronger. And I think that to your point, giving a simple dose of fitness will maximize their work capacity within the hour. But I do think there is a way if you're scaling and triaging everyone in your class well, that you can still put some kipping pull-ups, some toes to bar, some lower level. I call them lower level because they're regularly like in the open, those types of kipping gymnastics and still have people learn them, but do them in mixed settings. Think some formats are better than others to teach people or allow people to slow down and work on skills. But like AMRAPs are a great place, in my opinion, for them to choose a harder variation they normally would. And then if it is a 12-minute, a workout that's 4 time, but with a 12-minute expected time domain, and you want them to be turning over repetitions, 15 to 20 reps a minute, like, yeah, they might need to be doing jumping pull-ups for the day to get the muscular endurance and the continuous contraction that we're looking for. So I think it's circumstantial is really kind of it depends comment. And I think that there's a way that you can do both and have it be appropriate as long as you're not afraid to tell people, no, you're not doing kipping pull-ups today.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already kind of seeing this. I haven't heard someone use the term like these lower level sport specific movements. It's a good way to put it because that's what it is. Just normal kipping pull ups, toes to bar. I'm trying to think another example of a movement that would be considered a lower level sport specific movement to CrossFit. I would say toe to bar and pull ups are good.
Wall walk.
Wall walks, that's a good one. That's like the line. It's right before the line, I would say.
Yeah,
But it's there.
exactly.
Wall walks are good.
Especially with the way that they're modified within that online portion of the sport. Like within the open, they're modified just basically like get your hands behind the line, get your hands in front of the line, 1 to 2 steps, totally appropriate. And I think that in a class setting, you can get people inverted and supporting themselves through shoulder girdle without, you know, going fully upside down or getting themselves into an unsafe position and still have them turn over reps at a relatively similar rate as a high level athlete.
Yeah, and I think those lower level movements aren't destructive in a way that we've been talking about.
Sure.
I think for the most part, I think you can do wall walks, toe to bar, and just normal pull ups and not have to be worried about long term effects of your shoulder. But what I was getting at is I think we're already seeing that what we're talking about, that these lower level movements almost being the ceiling in some workouts at a lot of gyms. I think programming ring muscle ups and handstand walks like multiple times a week. Most gyms, I feel like most gyms aren't doing that, and I think
I agree.
it's probably for the better, I would say. I think, like I said, those that's fine doing it like a cycle on a weekly basis, but just put it in a skill piece. Put it in a skill piece, work on a
Yeah.
skill piece, and then when it's time to do a conditioning workout, let's do a conditioning workout.
At our gym, I put in optional accessories at the end of each day. And so they can access it via their app. And a lot of times, especially on Saturdays, I'll put in the higher skill gymnastics work and I write them in a way that's like progressive in nature. So realistically, they're getting a good warm up, they're getting positional development. And then from there, if they have the skill, then they usually get a 10-minute EMOM of one set of muscle ups per minute. And maybe for some people, that's three low ring muscle up turnovers. And for other people, that's actual bar muscle ups, right? Who knows? It just depends on where they're at. But I try to keep them relatively open ended so that they can ideally ask questions if they feel so inclined to do that type of development. And we can help them with that after class. And there's been multiple days where it just turns into a little group like skill session where we're all just hanging out, chatting, talking shop about what's going on in front of us. So I think there's a way to do it that is developmental for the higher level skills, but they're rarely ever in our program at the moment because of the current demographic that we have in front of us.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, one thing I think about is as a gym, whatever community training like normal CrossFit style is, I think for a while, and I think it's shifting towards this kind of wave that we're discussing, is if we value just raw fitness more than skill expression and like is there an ideal, and like I think we're definitely kind of translating and like leaning over to this valuing raw fitness more, and I think that's in part of the rise of high rocks and being like accessibility matters, it does matter, but us being crossfitters, we know that skill matters as well. And I think we're like maybe 5 to 8 years ago, a lot of gyms, a lot of general population training was pretty skill focused. Like you'd go in and there's a chance one day you could go in for a workout, you could snatch, and then you could do a workout like Amanda with ring muscle ups and snatching, just super high demands of skill needed to reach intensity. And I think this rise of high rocks has made us be like, accessibility does matter. And we're like kind of like swinging the pendulum over a little bit. I think for the betterment of everyone, is that maybe we don't need to touch all skills at the frequency we once were. And we're just shifting over to this raw fitness matters, maybe more than skills. And it's just like the pendulum swinging. And I think it's for the betterment of training the general population, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be touching skills. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you think we're valuing the raw fitness too much, I guess, right now? Because like for what we just laid out, is that we be valuing skills more?
Too much? No. No, I don't think it's too much. I think that for most people, they're going to get out of the gym what they want. I think that for the people who want more, generally, they're the people at the end of class trying their own skill development and or asking, how do I get better at this? The people who are perfectly happy showing up, throwing down, doing some simple deadlifts, burpees, rowing, whatever, and just like having a great time, they are running their head in the wall and they just love to throw down. And that's why you see like these high rock specific events and high rock sims just selling out right and left. It's not because they're novel, cool, or anything of the sort. It's because all of their friends can show up. Everyone can do it to some degree, and they get to just bring the hype and have a really hard, effective workout for the day. Effective being they got their heart rate up for a prolonged period of time and they probably gained some fitness from it, right? Because of the piece of intensity that they could tap into that you talked about. I think that as we all know in the space, intensity does drive adaptation. And if someone is directly limited by a skill, a barbell, or, a position, they probably are going to feel like almost discouraged if they're not in the right proper environment that is building them up over time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's a top-down issue at a lot of gyms probably. Gyms like F45 and the lower barrier to entry that people can just like are super accessible to everyone. They have done a lot for the fitness space, and I am in the camp that whatever gets people moving is good. I'm happy for them, and that's more important to me than like, are you doing CrossFit or not? And or do you want to do muscle ups and snatch or not? I want you to come in, feel welcome, have a great time, and then if you want more, I'll give you more. Or we can talk about your options for more. But the reality is, I think that most people love the hype. They love getting together with their friends. And the lower the accessibility, the more people can show up and do it, the more hype the environment will be. And it's a vicious cycle of excitement.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, your comparison. I talked to F45 and Orange Theory some, and I mean, the main thing is like I think you're right. I think someone getting moving is like the first step, and like it almost doesn't matter what it is at that point. And just like the way this space works is like there's so many people saying this is good, this is bad. And the truth is like at first, something is better is the best. Like just get moving and do something. And so many people get so caught up in, well, this person said this is bad. This person said this is bad. It's just like that doesn't matter. Like build the habit in your life first. Get moving, do it consistently, do it regularly for a prolonged period of time. And then at that point, then we can start asking about like, what are your goals? What do you want to do? But building the habit is the most important. And doing that comes from what you said. Find something that you enjoy and start doing it regularly. And then we can ask questions of what should you be doing? What is your goal? And then I just think we get so caught up in the space about what is the best? What should you be doing? And for so many people out there, those questions don't matter. The questions that matter is what's going to get them moving right now and what's going to let them do it consistently. That's
Yeah.
what matters.
And you said for a long period of time. And I think that's the piece that when we go back to what we talked about earlier of what where is the line of volume for the higher skill movements? When and where should isolation work, bicep curls, tempo work, and joint support, come into play? What does the recovery look like? If you do anything with intention and you work hard at it for a long period of time, you're gonna get pretty dang good. And you just have to try hard repeatedly, because it's not like you get this motivational like wave of excitement every time you walk in the gym. We all know it's hard. And it's the people who can weather the storm, stay healthy for a long period of time, and bring focus to each session and do that for 5 to 10 years. And you're going to be a completely different human. It's amazing. But it all starts with just finding something you like. Do something.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Doesn't matter. And then it gets to a point like, doesn't matter your goal, consistency in adhering to the program, as you just laid out, is extremely important. Whether you want to be someone competing at the highest level of your sport or you just want to lose 10 pounds, adherence and consistency is like rule number one. And you being a coach, you see this play out at high level athletes, general population, someone working out for the first time. So I guess my question would be is doesn't matter who it is. What are patterns that you would see when someone comes to you for the first time? Someone could be striving for the CrossFit Games. Someone could be striving to just lose weight. It doesn't matter. What are patterns that you see when you start developing a relationship with someone that you're like, boy, this person's mindset is in the wrong place, and I am worried for them that they're not going to accomplish their goals because they're thinking about this incorrectly. What are red flags you have?
So I communicate with people on two different levels, right? Like on two different, avenues, because I have remote clients and I have in-person clients, right? So on the remote client side of things, almost every consult call starts the same way. I'm really excited. I have this big goal. This is what I can do, what I'm willing to do. And yes, I'm willing to do everything that it takes to achieve it. And then I give them 1 to 2 weeks of assessments, and it's boring. You set up your camera, you film yourself doing an air squat on day one. You go down the list and you have about 10, depending on where they're at in the season and what their current ability level is, you have somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks. So 5 to 10 days of assessments. And it's monotonous, but it checks the box of all of the movement patterns I want to see, general capacity with that's relevant to the sport, etc. And from there, I have a very clear picture of you as an athlete and how you move and what your skill capacity is, work capacity is. But it's also a vetting system of who's willing to do the detailed work. And I think that often than not, the people who miss things in the assessment period end up quitting within 3 months, or they just aren't compliant at all. Then there are people that I don't necessarily get excited to work with, right? Like it's a two-way street on the remote side. In the front, or sorry, in the client facing, in person type of experience, I think generally it starts off with what they're talking about. You ask them like, what are your goals? A lot of people will be like, oh, get healthier. But then if they start talking about like weight on the scale, you understand that there needs to be education about the benefits of focusing on what you can do rather than what you look like, and how they are correlated, but you will see the aesthetic results that you want through focusing on performance. And I think that generally those are kind of my two red flags, is like compliance throughout the assessment period for the remote clients, and then focusing on basically kind of like superficial based metrics and measurements on the client facing front, in the in-person front. But you were talking about mindset. What do you have in mind? Like what type of red flags come up for you when you start talking to people?
Mine is pretty pretty straightforward. Is when someone starts like, I love it when people come to me and they're, like, hungry for their goal, and if they have a specific goal, that's awesome. My red flag is when someone is very clearly obsessive about their goal, and specifically with a timeline for that goal. So if they're wanting to qualify for X competition on this date, or if they want to lose a certain amount of weight by this date. When they try and give me or themselves a strict timeline to accomplish their goal, it's just a red flag for me.
My favorite question is, how long will it take me to get X thing? Skill, weight loss, strength number. And I'm like, I don't know.
I don't like that question. It's oftentimes when people obsess over it, they ask me questions like that. They ask me a wide range of questions about how soon it's going to happen. And the problem with that I see is they are so obsessed about the outcome. And I try and sit them down and educate that you're going to get to your goal. There's no doubt you're going to get to your goal, but it might not happen on the timeline you want. What we need to focus on is building the systems and the habits in place that you can sustain. Because I know I can get you to your goal, but I want you to continue down that road, even if you stop working with me. And it's the fact that they are obsessing about the outcome and rather than the actual process of getting to the goal. And
Sure.
like one of my favorite piece of advice is with people's diet is I always tell them if you're not willing to do it forever, don't do it. And this is something I tell people all the time in the gym. And this could be true with people with training. Like if someone's trying to go down a super hard training block and that there's absolutely no way they can adhere it to like 90+% of the training for more than 3 weeks, they're way overreaching. Like you've got to be able to maintain for a long time and all your goals will come true. If you obsessing over the end goal is not going to be constructive. You're wasting energy. You need to focus on what you can do right now, actions you can take today. Wake up tomorrow, do the same thing. Stop obsessing over the goal that's in the future that you can't even see, that there's a lot of factors outside of your control that might not even let you get there. Just focus
Yeah,
on right
absolutely.
now, the process.
The process is huge, man. And there's plenty of books that tell you all about that. But that said, the game of attrition and who can stick with the goal for the longest generally will allow you to sort of surpass other people in the competitive space. So talking about longevity, as we said earlier, the people who can continue to do their consistent workload that they can tolerate over, a 5 year, 10-year span is going to they're going to surpass the people who dedicate 1 year of focused hard training, right? Because of things and qualities that take time to develop, like the aerobic system, like movement economy and skills, right? Most people develop those things at different rates due to mobility restrictions or just general coordination and their natural innate athleticism, right? And so, really, it doesn't matter what the goal is or what level, like shoot for the moon, you'll end up with the stars type of mentality, as long as you can do it for the time that you're willing to tolerate that workload, right? Like most people give up before they get to their goal because the workload is too much and unmanageable for them. And to your point, if you can't do it nearly forever, then you're probably doing too much right now. Like, I think that's actually a pretty good rule of thumb. And for most people, I think there are outliers that want more and want sooner because they understand they're working against time. Like my client Jace, for example, he says every year after the season, he's like, I think I have one more year. I think I can do it one more time. And it's not because he wants to quit and he's looking forward to it being done. He's trying to be objective and realistic of what his life can tolerate financially, relationships, and workload. And he's like, yeah, I'm just like, I'm going to give it another year. And then he's like, cool, I'm going to give it another year. Cause he's just in his mind, he's taking it one season at a time. And then within that season, he's taking it one day at a time. Right. Because we have to just show up to each session and do what's on the board that we can tolerate within reason. Took me 8 years to get semifinals. The goal didn't change any year from 2020 or 2019 till the year I made it in 23. I told myself I was going to a sanctioned event or a semifinal this year, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it took me when I first started training CrossFit, I was like 3 years. I'll be at the games.
Dude, there was a
And
guy, his name was, it doesn't matter his name. But he was in London. I was like vacationing in London. At the time, he was a regional athlete. And I just like dropped into this gym and he was there and he was just like, yeah, 3 years of hard training, you can make it. I was like, cool. No.
yeah, it's just
False.
it's just the progress is a lot slower. And one thing I tell people, new people who come to the gym and train with me in person and do class, I always tell like I never like speak too explicitly about like their goals with like wanting to get fitter. But like I do touch on it every once in a while. I'll be like, so what got you in here? And they'll be like, I want to get fitter. And I'm like, well, you will get fitter than you ever thought possible if I see you for the next long while. And it's just to let them know this, like this conversation we just had. If you're consistent with working out, you will see immense progress if you're willing to do it long enough. It's just, it's not going to happen in a week, a month, 4 months, 6 months. In years' time, you'll get fitter than you ever thought possible if you're willing to set up those systems and habits that allow you to do that. And that's what most people fail to do. Majority of people in America cannot get to the point that they can regularly set up those systems and habits in place to maintain exercising long term. Partially because it's a convoluted space. There's a lot of opinions about things being good, things being bad, and things are good and bad, but that just back to what I said earlier is starting with something is the best. Do that for a long time, then we can decide what's good, what's bad. Build the habit. Well, that was good. You got anything else you want to leave out there for the audience?
No, I think we covered some good stuff. I think we covered objective metrics in the space, whether it be formats and systems to the season, longevity, in the space for competitors and GPP people alike, how to get closer to your goals over time, which is it takes time. And here we are, an hour later or so. I think that we covered a wide breadth of topics, and hopefully the viewers got something out of this and that resonates with them.
All right. Dope. Thanks for coming on, Harley.
Thanks, John.